So today we're going to start our unit on expressions, and one of the first things you need to know, you got to know what an exponent is. So we're going to start with exponents. You may have seen it, you may have heard it, so make sure that we're all on the same page and understand how they work and how to do them, because when we start solving expressions and solving equations, you've got to know how to do those exponents and make sure you understand order of operations, because they get tricky and sometimes they're easy to mess up. Sometimes even I mess them up, so we want to make sure that we understand what's going on here. So first of all, exponents. Get the vocabulary, let's get the definition. A number that tells how many times another number is multiplied by itself. Okay? Simple enough. So let's look at, first of all, how we would write them, okay? And also how to read that. So this is probably what you're familiar with seeing. Okay? And probably maybe in a younger class or something like that, you sometimes called this the big number and the little number. We're not going to do that anymore. We're in 6th grade now. We call this what they are. This is the exponent and this is the base. We'll see that in just a second. But as we're reading this, when you see a number written like this, it's read 2 to the 3rd power. Or anytime you see that 3 is an exponent, you can call that cubed. So we could call this 2 cubed. Okay? 2 to the 3rd power. 2 to the 3rd power. Here we have 2 to the 2nd power. Or when you have a 2nd power, you can sometimes call that 2 squared. Okay? So if you had something else such as that, we could call that 3 to the 4th power. Read the base first, tell me what power it's raised to. Okay? That's how we need to read those. Make sure we're reading them right and saying them right. Make sure we have our vocabulary correct. Okay? So let's make sure we understand the parts. Okay? The 2 here is our base. Okay? That's the number that we're worried about. That's the number that gets repeated. That's the number that gets multiplied over and over and over again by itself. Okay? Number being multiplied, the base, the big number, but we're not calling that anymore. Remember that? This is 3. This is the exponent, the little number. Not called that anymore though. It's called the exponent. This tells me how many times to multiply. So if I was looking at this, one of the first mistakes that people make, and it's easy to do because your brain sees this and it just clicks. It goes 2, 3, multiply, 2 times 3 is 6. The answer is 6. Well, that's not true. Okay? That's a common mistake. This means 2 multiplied by itself 3 times. That's 2 times 2 times 2. The actual value of this is 8 because 2 times 2 is 4 times another 2 is 8. Okay? But this is our base. This is our exponent, this is our base. The number being multiplied, how many times are we multiplying it? Now we call that base our factor. Okay? And it can be a repeated factor. So here we have 5 times 5 times 5. Okay? The 5 is our repeated factor. So if you wrote that in exponent form, you would say the 5 is the base, that's what's being repeated. Okay? And then the 3 is the exponent. How many times did it get repeated? Okay. Now we're not looking to solve this or find the value. We're just saying, how could you write this in exponent form? How can we make it more concise? How can we make it more clear? How can we make it simpler maybe in fact? Okay. This is 5 to the 3rd power, or we could call that 5 cubed. Okay. 5 times 5 times 5. The repeated factor of 5 multiplied 3 times, 5 to the 3rd power. Okay, so 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. Okay. The number 7 is being used as a repeated factor over and over and over again. 7 is used as that factor 5 times. So if I'm going to write that in exponent form, 7 to the 5th power. Okay. 7 multiplied by itself 5 times. So if you were solving this, you could say, well, that's 49, so is that 49 times 49 times that other 7. So it gets very, very large. Exponential form grows very, very fast. This is much different than saying 7 times 5. Okay, that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to look at this and say 7 times 5, this is 35. Okay, we're not looking at that. We're saying this is 7 times 7 times 7 times 7, okay, 5 times. So it makes a huge number, and the numbers grow very, very fast. Okay. Well, let's look at this one then. 10 to the 3rd power, 10 cubed. We're going to write that in repeated multiplication. So we have our base of 10, our exponent of 3. What's being repeated? What is the factor that's being repeated over and over again? So in this case, it's the base. It's the 10. So this is really saying 10 times 10 times 10. Okay? 10 being repeated 3 times. Now, I'll show you a little trick. What's really cool about tens is if you wanted to solve this and find its value, it's going to be a 1 with 3 zeros. The actual value of that would be 1,000. We'll get to that, some of that stuff in class as well, but just a little shortcut sometimes when you're dealing with the value 10. Okay? So let's practice this. Let's find the value. Here's our exponent form, 11 to the second power. We can also call that 11 squared, right? Not 11 cubed. 11 cubed would be to the third power. This is 11 squared, 11 with the power of 11 to the second power, if you want to read it that way as well. So what does this mean? So let's write it out in repeated multiplication first so we understand exactly what we're saying here. This is not 11 times 2. Is not. It is not 11 times 2. The answer is not 22. Okay, so if you're thinking 22 in your head, erase that. Okay, scrub it out. It's not 22. Okay, this is 11 times 11, which would be 121. Okay, so another way to write 121 is with a base of 11 and an exponent of 2. These have the exact same value. They are equal. Let's try another one. Okay, let's try a different color marker here. Find the value of 9 to the third power. So again, we've got to establish what's our base. Okay, what's being repeated? Okay, and in this case, it's the 9. So this is not, again, this is not 27. This is not 9 times 3. Okay, we want to make sure that we do not do that. This is 9 times 9 times 9. Okay. Oh, now we got to really start thinking here, right? Okay, so we can use some of our properties, and we can say the associative property of multiplication lets me group these. So I'm going to say, well, 9 times 9 is 81. And then 81 times 9, well, maybe I need to go over here just for a second. 81 times 9, that's 9, and that's 72. So 9 to the third power is 729. Okay? That's a huge, huge difference than 27. So if you were thinking 27, because it was 9 to the third power, remember, erase that. Get that out of there. This is 9 times 9 times 9. Repeated factor of 9 3 times. 9 times 9 is 81. 81 times 9, 729. One last example like this. 4 to the fourth power. Okay, not 16. Okay, somebody was thinking that one. It's not 16. This is 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Okay. Now, here's how I like to do this. Just kind of like I did there a second ago. Kind of group these. It makes the multiplication a little bit easier. So if you look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, 4 times 4 is 16. And so is this 4 times 4. That's also 16. Now I have 16 times 16. Well, I'm going to have to go over here to the side. I don't know 16 times 16 off the top of my head. 6 times 6 is 36. Carry my 3. 96. 0 for my placeholder. Done with that number. 1 times 6. 1 times 1. Add it all up. And I get 256. So 4 to the fourth power is 256. Okay? Exponential growth. The numbers get really fast, really quick. Okay? Or they get really high really quick. Not really fast, they get really high really quick because they're growing by multiplication. All right. Now, here's a tricky one. Okay? Let's challenge you for a second. Okay, we'll do this one together, and then you're going to do one on your own like this, and we'll probably do something like this in class as well. Okay? But it says write 64 with an exponent by using 4 as the base. Now, the first thing that a lot of people like to do is they want to say, okay, I got to write 64 as an exponent, so you want this and this. Okay, so I'm not saying 4 to the 64th power. Okay, that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, we're not talking about 4 to the 64th power. Okay, grab my eraser there. Sorry for the quick camera move. What we're saying is that we want to write the value of 64 in exponent form. So I've written out the parts that we're going to need here. We're going to need we will need a base, we'll need an exponent, and we need that final value. Well, I just told you, we want the final value to be 64. So I'm going to go ahead and put that over here. Now, over here, I need to make this balance, because I need it all to equal 64. Well, we were given one other important piece, 4. Use 4 as the base. So that goes here. So what I'm really trying to figure out is what exponent goes there that makes 4 times itself equal 64. Now, one of the first things that you might try to do is say, well, okay, 64 divided by 4, that is, goes in once, that's 16. You know, when you put 16 there. This is not 4 to the 16th power. Think about it. 4 times 4. Okay, so there's the exponent of 2. That's 16 itself. Okay, and then if we said, so if we put 4 times 4, that's 16, times 4, well, wait a second. Hey, that's 64. Well, how many factors of 4 did I just use there? I used 1, 2, 3. So 4 to the 3rd power equals 64. I wrote the value of 64 in exponent form when it is 4 to the 3rd power. Okay? So that seems a little tricky. You're going to need to do one of these on your own here in a second. But don't get confused. I'm not saying, 4 to the 64th power. I mean, that's a huge number. Put that into a calculator sometime and see how big of a number that is. Okay? Huge, 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 huge number. Okay? We don't want that one. All right. So it's your turn. Okay, you need to put this into practice. This should be on the sheet that you're working with or on a notebook piece of paper if you've got that. Okay, I want you to do 3 questions. You're going to bring these into tomorrow, and this will be how we start class so we can see where you are and what we need to do from there and get started on the activity that we'll be working on in class. Okay, so first of all, I want you to write 12 to the 4th power in repeated multiplication. Second of all, I want you to find the value of 4 to the 3rd power. Oh, we maybe already did that one, didn't we? Maybe I can change that just for a second. Okay, let's make this 5 to the 3rd power. All right, we're going to make this 5 to the 3rd power. Find the value of 5 to the 3rd power, or 5 cubed. So tell me what it equals. If you multiplied it out, what would it equal? And then lastly, I want you to write 32 with an exponent by using 2 as the base. Now that's just like what we did over here. Okay? Write 64 with an exponent by using 4 as the base. Remember over here, 64 went over here as our final value. This was our base, and we had to figure out the exponent. So I'm kind of asking you to do the same thing. 2 is the base. What exponent do we need to make it equal 32? Okay? If you need to pause the video, you need to rewind, now's the time to do that, and I'll see you tomorrow in class.